Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you. And we have a wonderful treat in store. We have Doctors Robilotto and Chacon, who are going to teach us everything that we need to know about advancing devices, compounds, and to academic and financial and educational success. And I know you're here independent of the refreshments. Someone once told me the only way you can get people to come to a new lecture is by refreshments. No, that's not true. Anyway, so Dr. Robilotto is going to start, and thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, okay. So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to come speak today. Turn it up. All right. How about now? Is this better? No? How about now? No? All right, I'll just talk loudly. How about that? So anyway, what I'm going to do is, so for those of you who don't know me, and I know I've worked with many people in this group, but I am Phil Robilotto. I'm the Associate Vice President for Tech Transfer. I work out of ORD for Jim Hughes, and I'm also the Director of UM Ventures Baltimore. And I think many of you are probably familiar with some of what we do, but what I'm going to cover today quickly, because I know we're here really for the main event, which is Marco and his story, but I did want to give everybody a little overview of our new ventures group and talk specifically about two programs that I think could be of interest to folks as researchers and/or clinicians. So if you look on this slide, this is our group. This is UM Ventures Baltimore. I think most people are pretty familiar with the right-hand side of the slide, or as you look on the left, which is the IP and the licensing. So our group, we have in-house patent attorneys. We take in about 150 new invention disclosures each year. We evaluate them for patentability. Sometimes we copyright them. We'll file about 80 new provisionals, and probably between PCTs, US, different countries, we'll do about 200 filings in a given year. The licensing group, which is headed up by Nancy Cowger, who is in the back, there she is. So does all the marketing and all the licensing of the technologies. And we close about 50 deals a year now. So about a deal a week for technology that is being invented here at the university on campus is being licensed out into a commercial partner for them to hopefully advance towards patient care. What I'm going to talk about today quickly, and I promise if there's interest, I'm happy to come back at a later date and go in more detail. But I wanted to give everybody an overview of the Ventures Group, which is a newer group. It's a smaller group. It was formed about 4 or 5 years ago. It's grown to 4 full-time people and many consultants. And their whole role is to really commercialize our more advanced technologies. So they help with startups. We've launched 33 companies out of UMB just the last 4 years. We can directly manage our own companies. We can step in as act as management for companies that, as long as they're based on UMB intellectual property. We manage funding from the state to help support promising translational technologies and move them towards a point where they're ready to be put into a company. And we can also make direct investments into our company. We got the ability to do that through the Board of Regents 4 or 5 years ago. Our first investment was Harpoon, which is good. That was a good first investment. And we've done 10 since then. And all of that is managed through this new ventures group. And what I'm going to talk about is the 2 big programs that they actually run. And the first one is the Life Science IP Fund down at the bottom of the slide. And the second one is their startup support and investment. It's really more of a group of actions as opposed to one specific program. But I thought these would be the 2 things of most interest to you. So the Life Science IP Fund, again, this is funding that comes through the state. It's managed by the Ventures Group along with our board, which is made up of our entrepreneurs in residence, which are consultants that are coming from industry, from regulatory, And the job of them is to actually vet the technology. So what would happen is you would work with your licensing officer. You have a particularly promising technology. Maybe you're stuck. We can't quite convert the provisional. We have good animal data, but not enough of it. Whatever the situation is, the licensing officer will bring it to the ventures group, who will then assess it using these outside folks, and we will put a project plan in place. So just like we would have done if you're working at a pharmaceutical, a biotech, or a med device company, put a plan in place. How do I move this technology into the clinic? What's the regulatory strategy? What's the financing strategy? What are the go, no-go decision points? We will put that together, and then we will actively project manage this project on behalf of the university for you. So the folks in this group will work with different CROs. They'll work with the internal folks here if we're going to use one of the centers, and or find external CROs where we can have this work done, bring in consultants where it's needed to, where we need them, and execute on the strategy, move it along. We also will, at a certain point in time, we have an end game, which is to get this technology into a company, into a startup, or into the hands of a third party to commercialize it. And they're actively the whole time facilitating financing. So we can put direct investment in, but really we're looking for third parties, whether it's grants, whether it is MII, state funding, whether it's foundations, or whether it's individual investors. And then the goal is to launch the company. This is fairly early. We just got the ability to do this at the beginning of 2018. It's been up for about 18 months. We've actively managed 10 projects through the end of this past fiscal year. Since that time, we have added one more, probably going to add 2 more. And we look at the same things as outputs, for how we're doing for success as you would. We look at how many new disclosures, how many new publications, new presentations, posters, grants. And of course, for us, we're very interested in how many companies we can help facilitate the launching of. So we've done 3 options to companies on technologies that have been funded through this mechanism. And we also now have 3 new startup companies that have been funded either in part or almost entirely through this mechanism. 2 just launched in the last 2 months. One I can't talk about yet, but I will soon. I'm looking forward to talking about it, because we funded a lot. But this one case in point I just wanted to bring up very quickly, because I think it's a really good example. This is Genie Technologies, and the press release is coming out, but we already put a story out about them in Biospace. This is a technology's P38 MAP kinase inhibitor program. Was invented, there are inventors from School of Medicine and School of Pharmacy on it. Was brought to us through a licensing officer. I think Miriam was involved in it. And as you know, we funded a fairly small part of this, but it was on developing some novel analogs. And we helped kind of connect the company that was interested in the technology with the investigators. And I think importantly, this was a success, and they took an option, and then they took a license, and they just won Y Combinator, which is a very, very impressive source of funding. And it's a way to get a lot of funding into your company very quickly. And on the bottom there, I think I just want to highlight what is probably the most important thing, is that this project also received support from ICTR as well. And one great benefit that we have as of recently is Miriam, who is here in the back, and is very sad because she is unfortunately leaving us, but we're not going to replace her, but we do want to replace her, because this is exactly what we're looking to do, is find technologies that are being funded through this program that seem to be promising to the reviewers here, be able to extract intellectual property out of them, have somebody sitting between the 2 groups that can say, this could benefit from funding on this aspect, and we can fund this, and really sort of jumpstart these technologies. And I think it's great. And I think Miriam was a perfect person. She's going to be very difficult to replace, but I think we can do a lot more of these. And I think it would really, really benefit the university to do that. Anyway, so this is our first, first success. Nice program, because it was funded by our internal program, Life Science IP Fund, and also by ICTR. Second piece, really quickly, this is our startup support. So it's a little further along. When I came here, which is 7 or 8 years ago now, It's very difficult to launch companies. We just didn't have the resources. But the Board of Regents, the schools have been very supportive of helping us get what we need in place to actually launch startup companies. And all of this service has been, just initiated over the last couple of years. So again, the New Ventures group in our office can help develop a corporate strategy. They can facilitate funding. They can launch companies. We have a site where we can put your company into, even if it's just virtual, so you can have an address, so you can apply for SBIRs. It's over at the Lyon Brothers building. So just catty corner from the biopark. There's office space, there's co-working space, and we have a wet lab that's coming on board that's going to be accessible to our startup companies. We have it up, we just are hiring a lab manager part-time. So you really, if we have technology that we think we can help fund and is going to be, the genesis of a startup company, we really can help put all those pieces in place. And again, I have to thank the state and the schools for really supporting the development of this. Like I said, we do manage our own company. So even if there is no management team, we can step in and run them. Living Pharma, we managed and sold to Lenogen. That was Eduardo Davila's company. Surgigen is a company that came out of, what was Vadim Morozov, who's no longer here, but it was his technology on a laparoscopic device. We are in late stage talks with a strategic partner. And Isoprene, one of the founders, our esteemed Dr. Vincent Anjar, is another company that we are in the process of moving forward, already has exclusively sub-licensed technology with a company called Hoff Therapeutics. So we also will invest in companies, and they have to be UMB-based intellectual property. Everything we work on has to be UMB IP. So we have to have some sort of filing on it, and in order to invest in the company, it has to be born out of UMB. These are the companies that we've invested in, come from different schools. Harpoon, our first, has already exited, was acquired by Edwards. Living Pharma, we managed, was acquired by Miltenyi through Lenogen. We've helped fund Breathe, Surgigen, Coaptech, which you have seen probably a lot of news about. Next Step, Jelly. We have one that still hasn't announced that we've put some money into just a couple of months ago, and we have 2 investments pending. So the good news is the more we're able to do this and we get returns, we can help support more projects and more investments in these companies. This is, a lot of these companies have been launched in just the past couple of years, with the exception of Remedy. But, I think there's a lot to feel good about as a researcher or a clinician here. There are a lot of great technologies that have made their way into these companies and either received some support either directly or indirectly through the group. And we're looking to, make this slide bigger and bigger all the time. So like I said, that's sort of a quick, the one company I don't have on here is Paragon. I wish we had Paragon, of course, but Mark is going to tell you, what was it, 50 or 75 years ago, or it was 25 years ago, that we didn't have the services that we do now. But I am happy to come back and talk in more detail if anybody's interested about getting kind of more into the details of the process or how we can specifically help you. But I just wanted to provide a short overview in advance of introducing Marco Chacon, who is a former colleague, briefly, in ORD and a great, successful entrepreneur. So thank you, and I will turn things over to Marco. Okay. Okay. Put it in there.
Okay. Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you, Philip, for your introduction. Where's Phil? So I'm going to have you make it up to me with the new company for you to know, okay? So, all right, so title is a little, Miriam and I came to a meeting of the minds. It is about this whole subject of entrepreneurship. Maybe old hat for some of you, maybe a little newish for others. And it's about our wonderful biopark. And it's about the history of a company that I founded this many years back, better than 25 years ago, that struggled like the Dickens for many years and eventually turned a corner. And there are a couple of pivotal events that enabled the company to eventually have a very successful exit. Need to tell you at the outset that no man, no woman is an island. And I have been blessed by having managed to bring to the company, in this case, you know, a group of wonderful scientists, engineers, quality folks, project managers, the list goes on. And it is to the collective sort of credit that the success of this company goes to. So, too many to mention, but suffice it to say that I am one very lucky person in finding that group of folks. All right, so forward. Oh, here. Okay. All right. I don't know, maybe because I'm getting older, I frame everything in the context of history. But I think it's true. And I look at my lifetime and the lifetime of all of us. It's been a privilege to having been a witness of and in a modest, tiny little participant in what is, in no uncertain terms, a major revolution in thought. And that is the events that have transpired, certainly during the second half of last century and into the future. Some of these milestones are listed in there. There are too many to include in a paradigm like this, but nonetheless, you know, the gene protein one enzyme paradigm dates back to 1941. 1953, structured DNA is published, by Watson, Crick, Franklin, and Wilkins, as you all know. They were awarded a Nobel, fairly enough, to only two of them, but let's not go there, in 1962. Recombinant DNA technology continues to impact, you know, the work that is conducted in research institutes throughout the world. Human Genome Project launches in 1990. It's particularly important to mention that since we are privileged to have in our, I can say our faculty, one Claire Frazier, who is one of the pioneers in launching into these efforts. Today, she's also the CEO of the AAAS, which is no small potatoes as well. 1997, first monoclonal antibody is approved by the FDA. First cancer vaccine in 2010. CAR-T, this wonderful cell therapy targeting leukemias and lymphomas, hopefully in some future day, also applicable to solid tumors. It's left to be determined of yet. And certainly this whole field that I have become very familiar with, that is of gene therapy, insofar as that the company, as you will see later, became very vested in that space. Now, 2017 is also a pivotal year. I don't know if some of you don't realize, but is the first year that the majority of drugs approved by the FDA happen to be protein drugs. And that is absolutely terrific. And it validates the absolute truism that biotechnology is real and is yielding products that are quite remarkable. I have to go to a rheumatologist every once in a while. The likes of Enbrel and Humira and protein drugs like that have literally revolutionized the way the rheumatoid arthritis and other arthritic diseases are treated today, also other autoimmune disorders. Anyway, so this is the larger picture, but then it is also in the context of each and every one of us. My journey is a little bit different. I'm a bird of a different feather, if you will. I was born and raised in Costa Rica. That's why I like the historical context, because I was 3 years old when Watson and Crick and Wilkins and Franklin published the molecule of DNA. So in my lifetime, what a privilege to have been witnessing all these wonderful events. 1970, well, 67, 68, I become an exchange student in a little community outside of Youngstown, Ohio. In 68, I went back to Costa Rica to get a job, to start school, which I did. I came back in 72. Imagine that, immigration from Central America. Used to be fashionable then. I hope that we can make the corner go in that direction once again. But in any event, I came back in 1972, quite literally chasing a very pretty girl from Ohio. A few of you people have met my wife of 47 years, but that is basically the main reason why I came back to the US. Put myself through school, undergraduate and graduate school. I am privileged to have Mary McKenna here. I didn't know she was going to be here, but one of my mentors from my days in grad school. I wouldn't be standing here had it not been for her influence and the influence of other academicians that took me under their magnificent wing. So I'm forever grateful. She knows that. So after grad school, circa 85, now what kind of thing? So I got a job because I needed to stabilize my family. I had 2 little babies in tow, so I got a job with the Department of Defense. Which was, I learned some things in there, and he protected us. But this kind of, I don't know, uneasy energy, if you will, this entrepreneurial bug in my belly needed to get expressed. And I told Mary and Tyson Tilden at the time that I was going to do something in the private sector. I had begun to hear this term biotechnology, and quite honestly, I had to look it up, because it was that new. Today, you know, we don't even think about it, but it was, the world was changing, and I wanted to take part in that. So founded a little company. I would give you more details in a little while. The company at the time was Paragon Biotech. I wanted to, naively enough, put products in bottles and sell that and keep growing a company. But the marketplace really changed the onus, the direction of the company. More people, interestingly enough, from pharmaceutical companies to NIH to NCI, they were asking us, me, and a very modest operation that we had at during the early stages, to do work for them. And after 10 requests are made, you know, you have to start paying attention. Eventually, the company turned into an all-services company, as I will describe later. Here comes the 2000s, 2010. In 2009, moved the company to the University of Maryland Biopark. I will talk to you about the exit that occurred in 2019, early this year, May to be exact. All right. Let's talk about this thing, entrepreneurship. Maybe all had to some of you, but you know, I have to, I structured things in pieces. I had to ask early on, or I had to have an answer to what I call the why question. Why are we here today? Why do you go to the labs and so dedicated to do your work? Why do I get up in the morning and shave this ugly face every day and keep moving and trying to do good things? Well, some time ago, I wrote this little piece here because I think it defines us all. And from that, you derive why we do what we do. History teaches us that there are no boundaries to the human spirit's thirst for discovery and technology development. A chosen passion for all of us, scientists, engineers, and men and women of vision that collectively dare to touch the future. So it is about that. And having an answer to that why question, then the other things begin to fall into place. The next question to ask is, okay, I'm passionate about science, about biology, but what do I do? We're talking about creating something that, call it a business, because that's what it is. You can call it something fancier if you want, but it boils down to that. the way that I looked at this, or the way that I suggest, and oftentimes I talk to students, younger people than you folks are. I'm not saying anything, but to find something, and you know what that is, something that you're great at. It's not that you're like, or you're a little bit good at it. It's something that you're really good at, really great, and identify a market. At the end of the day, and I hate to put it in such mundane terms, but it boils down to how many of these things am I going to sell? How many batches of a virus am I going to produce and sell? And make sure that at the end of the day, that the organization is a viable organization. What's the point if there is no growth, if it is going in the opposite direction? So scientific advances ushered the new industry of biotechnology, as discussed a little earlier, that's fueling the need for pharmaceutical services. And that is what I identified early on, including research services, process development, and GMP manufacturing of biologics. That includes all-inclusive recombinant proteins, monoclonal antibodies, vaccines, and viral vectors for gene therapy. Paragon Bioservices was organized and became a so-called CDMO, a contract development and manufacturing organization specializing in GMP manufacturing of vaccines. We happen to, and viral vectors for gene therapy. We have had the privilege of working with Wilberg and Dr. Levine's crew on a number of projects. The next question then follows, and that is the how. How do I do this? Things have gotten a little easier. It's never easy, but they are a little easier. So what are those, and the way to proceed in how do we do a company, I mean, I've settled and will tell you that you need to leverage regional strengths. We may not be Boston, we may not be San Francisco, but maybe we don't want to be there either. It's extremely expensive. We have great strength in our neck of the woods here. On the academic side of the academic sector, I mean, there are many other universities, but let's just talk about UMB and Hopkins. They're a source of talent that you need in order to put a team together. They're a source of intellectual property where interesting technology, IP, can be developed. They do translational research, and you're bound to find very interesting people doing things from the bench to the clinic. So there's large institutions like this are definitely involved in clinical development. So as the company develops a product, a therapeutic, for example, you know, aligning ourselves, you know, with the clinical side of a large institution like ours, you know, makes total sense, and you can take a product into the clinic. They're also a source of resources like incubator space, which is something that I capitalized on early on, going to the Hopkins incubator at the Alpha Center at Hopkins Bayview, eventually moving to the Biopark. Government, down the street from us, Department of Defense, NIH, NCI, the FDA. Every company, large and small, pharmaceutical, biotechnology company, device company, and so on, diagnostics company, have to make that trek through the FDA. So we're very fortunate to have the resource in our neighborhood. Source of talent, source of funding in conventional type of grants, but also small business innovative research grants, STTRs, Small Business Technology Transfer Awards. They're also a marketplace, certainly in our case, as we were providing services. And for quite some time, during the history of Paragon, I did a lot of projects for faculty, for postdocs at the National Institutes of Health and National Cancer Institute. So it is a source of demand for business. Grants and contracts. Once the company was up and running, we capitalized on working together with some of the folks at the university to collaborate in submitting proposals for contracts. And we were successful in landing a few of those opportunities. Certainly working with the CVD comes to mind, but other folks, as we were developing vaccine candidates for Ebola, Sudan, Zaire, and Marburg virus. Industry. We are blessed with the presence of AstraZeneca and GSK in the Rockville, the Gaithersburg, Frederick region, and literally more than 500 biotech companies in our midst. A source of innovation, employment opportunities, commercial development, and certainly demand for services. We asserted ourselves in the doing services for pharmaceutical companies in the region, but also outside of here. Pfizer was the first company that took us seriously. We did a lot of business with Bristol Myers, with Lilly, and several others. Capital, this is the fourth leg of this kind of stool that is extremely important. At the end of the day, we need to finance these fledgling new companies and even growing companies. Philip alluded to or described Momentum Fund. We also have the Baltimore Fund. We have the ICTR sort of a means of financing early stage projects. Growtech is a name that's been around in our region for a long, long time. NEA, although NEA is difficult to get them to go into a company early. Camden Partners is a private equity firm that funded us together with New Spring Capital out of Philadelphia. Sunderling is a fund from the West Coast that is paying attention to our region. I know that firsthand, for they have contacted me and other folks in the region that want to do things here in Baltimore. Deerfield Capital out of New York. They already vested in various programs and funding quite significant projects with our friends East at Hopkins, and it's just a matter of time that we can convince them to look at our technology as well. Capital, from early to late. Camden has there's a fund called the Nexus Fund. It's early stage venture capital, unheard of in Baltimore, but Nexus is really doing very well. These folks headed by Jacob Vogelstein and George Pietrokielos. But it's a wonderful organization, putting quite a bit of, they're raising a second fund in the neighborhood of about $75 million, which is pretty good for this area. All right, so I want to convey the absolute certainty that, you know, we all can do this. The fact is that a company of one many years ago, and I'm told this because I'm not involved with the company for quite some time now, but it's a company of 1,000 people projected for the first quarter of 2020. That is a remarkable feat, but it's totally doable. It's happened, it's real. I had a role up until 3 years or so ago of being deeply involved in overseeing that. I left the company with about 200 employees, and on its way up, as you will see, the slope of our growth. But here is where a new paradigm that has been identified, biotech became a reality. Pharmaceutical companies became biotech companies in many ways, either by organic growth or by acquisition of new biotech companies. But by paying attention to these changes, then Paragon managed to capitalize on that as it became a CDMO. I did mention, funded the company in 1990, brought it to the University of Maryland Biopark in 2009, and in 2019, we had an exit. Again, today, Paragon has, and also leveraging great assets, I won't elaborate that again, but there are 3 major sites, one at the University of Maryland Biopark, and I think that is absolutely powerful. You know, we have literally dozens of clients in leading biotech and pharmaceutical companies. They come to the biopark here in Maryland every week of the year, and they're doing their manufacturing, their stuff for phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and even commercial launch now in the new facility located by BWI Airport. Finally, the third facility that was acquired is the Novavax assets, if you will. So there are another 120 people, give or take, in that facility. So, okay, the biopark facility is earmarked for doing process development and manufacturing for phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials. About close to 130,000 square feet of space. The facility by the airport is huge. This warehouse is about 151,000 square feet of space, and we had dibs on a second one for about 120. Such are the changes and the miracle that has happened to this company. give a lot of credit for new team of executives. The new CEO for the last 2-3 years has been Pete Buzzy, and the company became, you know, a very professionally driven organization. Frankly speaking, I am not knowledgeable enough, prepared. I come from the bench myself, so this is kind of foreign to me. How do you form a deep and compelling executive team to take a company to a next level? It's difficult to sort of to embrace that, but it needs to be done. And I will talk a little bit about that in a second. So there are 10 suites at this facility and several others in the new warehouse. So virus production and purification, we'll segregate or talk about this a little bit more, because this is in a real sense what is behind the success of Paragon. I probably don't have to tell you that there are today literally identified thousands of orphan or rare and ultra rare diseases. It so happens that there are dozens of companies going after those indications as we speak. Yet there is no capacity to support clinical development, I mean, manufacturing for clinical trials and commercial launch, even less. So there are companies in the fields of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, in spinal dystrophy, in the thalassemias, in the hemophilias, you name it, storage diseases, ocular diseases, all of them need to find a place to manufacture these things. Actually, if we can take a little bit of credit, my team, we started doing this kind of work in gene therapy 15, 18 years ago. I don't know if you folks remember, but there was a peak in interest and emphasis, and GTI is a company located in Rockville that came and went, was bought out, I think, by Novartis. There was huge interest in gene therapy. Unfortunately, they were working with adenoviruses as vectors. And adenoviruses, you know, have this problem of being highly immunogenic. So unfortunately, a very negative event took place, a death of an individual in a clinical trial, and literally killed the field. So for the next many years, you know, nobody was interested in doing that. But by then, we had built a number of capabilities. We knew how to make them from scratch, both adenovirus and AAV. We had developed analytical tools, functional assays, infectivity assays, titer assays, electron microscopy protocols. So when the question began to happen again about 5 years, have you ever done this? Can you do this? The answer to that was absolutely yes. Then we built credibility with our clients, and they kept on coming back. Okay. So I think that this slide captures the whole history of this company from a growth a point of view. Again, struggle like crazy during easily 20 years, 18 years, 15 years. Two things that I will zero on are migrating the company or bringing the company to the University of Maryland Biopark in 2009. That went together with an expansion of our business plan, because I was dead set that we were going to add to our general potpourri of pharmaceutical services that were all preclinical in nature, non-GMP production of recombinant proteins and viruses. I wanted to do it under GMPs. And the reason was that our frustration was that we were losing clients. We were doing great in doing process development, and then we would lose those opportunities to the larger manufacturers like Lonza, Catalent included. So the company started taking off. 2010 was a banner year for us. But let's not forget, and you will find, those entrepreneurs in the room will find that there are things that your business plan cannot anticipate. Take, for instance, the banking crisis. At the end of 2008, I had 2 banking facilities with banks shall remain nameless. But in October, November of 2008, I got a knock on our corporate door, so to speak, said that now, if I wanted the rest of the money to come to the biopark, which we had planned to come to in March of 2009, that I had to sign personally. That meant the house, the cars, the cat, no cat, the dog, everything went on the line. And those are things that you're not prepared to do. And as a guy from Costa Rica, I can go to sleep in that corner fairly well. I might complain a little, but I will go to sleep. But it was totally unfair to bring my wife into realizing that was a tough discussion to have. And for a year and a half hence, you know, we were struggling, making sure that we would turn the corner on this company. But things worked out. The crew stayed together. Everybody took a haircut. So I think it's a sign of the loyalty and the strength, the character of my crew. John Cowger is Nancy Cowger's husband. He's one of my super lieutenants there that went through that. 20% across the board, me 50%, and that went on for a year and a half. But it works in mysterious ways. I told the crew, like I'm talking to you today, what was happening and what we needed to do. But that if they took that hit, that at the end of the year, I was going to net them whatever revenues they did not have by giving them company stock. And at the time, it was just paper. And some of them grumbled a little bit and said, well, you know, it's okay, but they didn't see the exit. But today, or early this year, many of these folks walked away with a pretty penny, a nice nest egg, because of that. So it can work in different ways. And I believe strongly in giving people, your crew, you know, a stake in the upside of the business. So the other thing was funding, private equity funding that came in. I brought those investors in 2014. Perhaps I should have done it earlier. I don't know, but it's silly to go back now. It turned out real well. I will elaborate a little bit of how tough that could be. But at the end of the day, it took off like a rocket. We have been recognized, you know, by the industry as a center of excellence in manufacturing of viral vectors for gene therapy. And Catalent was looking for such an asset to add to their small molecule and monoclonal antibody operations. They were after a company called Brammer up in Massachusetts, but they were actually looking at both Paragon and Brammer. Thermo came in and took Brammer away from them, but then we asked him to meet the same multiples that Thermo paid for Brammer, and they agreed to that. And in a matter of 2 months, we cut a deal in May of this year for $1.2 billion. So for new entrepreneurs in the room or new entrepreneurial endeavors, remember, scholarship and keen observation of natural phenomena are the engines of creativity and innovation. I believe that strongly. Having answered the questions why, what, and how, seek sage advice. This one is usually more earmarked for students or postdocs, but still a truism. I really advise that. Market research. There has to be a demand for whatever one is planning to do. Once decision on a path forward is made, then it's like guns blazing. No looking back. Both feet in the water or in the lake, whatever it takes. Always guided by those principles that have sustained me throughout my life. Conviction that no matter what comes your way, that you find a solution for. The courage to not be afraid of your own shadow, as is difficult to do. I mean, is fear of failure. But even I do believe that even when we fail, we learn something from it. So at the end of the day, is about reinventing ourselves and moving forward. Can't tell you, give you a lesson on integrity. Is what your mama, your dad, you know, put in your ear. And there's certain things that you don't do, and you cannot be just a little bit honest. You're honest or dishonest. Hard work, no substitute for that. You're gonna work like an animal. But always, that glass is always half full. Always. So I don't know if we have time for have a couple more minutes, I suppose. Okay, so the early days, a lot of uncertainty. But again, one can reinvent ourselves. Expect to struggle, but it's doable. The role of the CEO early on or later, I don't think it changes a whole lot. I advocate for the CEO as leader, not as boss. And those things get confused all the time. Leader is respected, protects his crew, and instills passion in the company. For those of you who know about the beautiful game, this is not an English player, he's a Spanish player, to the benefit of Dr. Davis here. But Andres Iniesta is a guy who is a magnificent player who, there are people like that see the entire field. So one has to try to do that and see all the moving parts, all the various characters that, and I mean characters, the people that you bring to the table. Your clients, you gotta read them as well. Steve Jobs, what else can one say about that wonderful guy? In many ways. He not only saw the future, but created his own reality as well when needed. So no is never an answer. And one thing that I always hated was people telling me why we cannot do something. Come to you with solutions for problems, not the usual whining. Leadership by example, not a task too humble that you wouldn't do yourself. So early at the job, late to go home, example. Well, in terms of growth, new people, motivation. One thing that we did there that worked very well, make sure that your people are aware of the impact of the work that we do. We implemented a program, if you will, to invite the CEO or CSO of a company that was interested in working with us or that we had a project with. And everyone, when we had maybe up to about 150 people that we could put them in the amphitheater at the biopark, we will have everyone from the company, and I mean everyone, from the warehousing people to the cleaning people to the scientists and engineers, everyone. Listening to these people tell you, sometimes heartbreaking, you know, that every week that there is no answer or a therapy for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, for instance. This is a real presentation by the head of one company like that. How many kids, you know, go into wheelchairs? I mean, it's just horrible. So that is not a motivator for your crew. I don't know what can do it. And they take to that, you know, wholeheartedly. Let's not talk about legal structure and all that sort of stuff. It's too boring. Review financials, you need those kinds of folks around, but let's jump on that. Financing the enterprise, that's important. Early on, you know, need to find friendly money. You have to go to Phil, because he's a pretty good guy when it comes to that. You have to go to family, to friendly sources of money. There's TEDCO, there's the Able Foundation, there is the Momentum Fund and the Baltimore Fund. Later on, you need to find institutional investors. And when you do that, a lot of things change. The founders, the people who begin with the company, oftentimes, especially scientists, founders, do not fare very well when funders come into place, institutionals come in. And it's difficult because basically you're handing over the baby that you have nurtured throughout the history of the company. But you must embrace it. And in a way, it's a compliment that a funding source pays you as the scientist founder, since they only fund less than 2% of the deals that they look at. So they're telling you your stuff is very good and we're going to put some money with you. If you take that money, you have to embrace it and support it. All the while keeping an eye on the operation. I mean, you don't have to disappear, but you're not going to continue being the boss or the CEO. So they may mean to might as well would have been that potted plant over there. I mean, the chairman of the board, is usually an oversight role. That's not me. I was fine with doing that. Well, there's another one here. But so long as I had a window into the operation, reports, monthly, quarterly meetings and so forth, then that was okay, but it wasn't great. So when you bring institutionals, prepare yourselves. Roles of advisors and board directors, that's an absolute must. There are a lot of people who are smarter than you are, that have been around a long time. I guarantee you, it's happened to me, they follow each other trying to help you. If you come to them with a serious, proposition, with humility, with respect. That's been the story of my life from the days that I was running around in grad school to today. Definition of success, I mean, I don't have to teach you any about this, but at least to me, positive influence on people, community, earn the respect of loved ones and colleagues. Making a couple of bucks is not a bad thing, but I never done that as a number one aim. My wife will tell you that I'm the worst capitalist in the world. But if you're passionate about what you do, I think money happens. All right. It gets easier. After one success, then it's amazing, it's about finding and building relationships. And by now there is a wealth of people, many of you I consider to be that network. And I find it very fulfilling that I can reach out to faculty, to PIs, to other business leaders in this region and outside of this region. You get to know a lot of folks from all sectors. All right, so the future, at least for me, this entrepreneurial bug has been with me too long, and I needed to let it out one more time. So moving forward, I had founded this company, Irazu. It was called Irazu, what the hell was the original Irazu? Biodiscovery, sorry. But then I realized that the world has changed. There is a huge need for the risking of intellectual property assets. Pharmaceutical companies shy away from going too early because it's too risky. Moreover, this paradigm, conventional paradigm of finding an interested PI in a pharma company matched to a PI in a university is very inefficient. They're ships in the night. What instead of one of this, and you have 5 or more assets to, present to a company? To me, that's the efficiencies increase. Going to the soccer analogy, more shots on goal is better than just one. So this is what Irazu Holdings is. Founded the company for the second time this time around. I have a patent position on that, although the patent position is really weak and old. There are about a couple of years left in there. It's a use patent, but I think that there is great potential for compositional matter patents to happen. But there are different things that we were going to be following up on. But one of them, which is, I feel kind of validated in some ways, in a very significant way, develop pharmaceutical interventions to induce hypoxia tolerance. I've been absolutely passionate about that. Nature, if you look at nature, nature has resolved that paradigm. Hibernators, young mammals, still with the mother, and caloric restriction models are neuroprotected, hypoxia tolerant. Nobody knows how it works. You can't asphyxiate a rat pup or a mouse pup in less than 10 minutes, 9 to 10 minutes. It takes 30 seconds to 40 seconds if you do the same thing to a young adult or to an adult rat. It's a miracle of nature. And it makes sense from an evolutionary point of view because those little animals need to survive. So I'm going after that. But events of yesterday, illustrate the importance of anything having to do with oxygen homeostasis, energy metabolism. the old disciplines that were taking over from molecular biology for the last 30 plus years, 40 years, is back. Metabolomics, all these wonderful things with new tools, with great technology. So I'm a student of caloric restriction models, hibernation, and young mammal. It looks something like this. Irazupa Holdings will do proof of concept and IND enabling studies on multiple assets. Those from our own collection. The number 2 one in there is in collaboration with Lauren Jackson out of radiation oncology. But it's the same principle. It's to protect tissues from the deleterious effects, collateral effects of ionizing radiation, whether it's in the clinic or, God forbid, in case of a nuclear event, in which case the government is interested in looking at protective molecules, protective strategies to do that with. Immuno-oncology. This is a very, I'm really excited about that. Working with Jim Galen out of the CVD, Wilbur's colleague, a wonderful Salmonella typhi platform, originally designed to go to develop vaccines against infectious diseases. But we identified, or I told them a couple of years ago, there's a lot of potential in my book. Instead of expressing these antigens on the surface of these outer membrane vesicles that are found in infectious agents, why not express antigens that are found in tumors? So we're going after a couple of tumor antigens expressed on these vesicles, and the hope is to induce one hell of an immune response. So I'm very excited about that. And then I'm looking for a gene therapy asset, but I think that we'll be successful in that. The idea is to create exits in due time. Once with the risk of these assets, the value of these assets increases, so transactions will be loftier, for lack of a better term. Either we can form a new company and then bring institutional money to the company, while the holdings company retains some equity in those new ventures, or do outright sales, licensing agreements, royalty streams with pharmaceutical companies. Now, I'm all over the map, and I will try this. Hopefully, I have enough time to go around this. It is about green energy. I love vultures in the sense that, you know, what they do, you know, they're doing what the first law of thermodynamics calls for, is, you know, recapturing carbons from being dissipated into the environment. But insects do that even more efficiently. How much biomass is wasted in urban centers, in farms? I mean, I don't mean to gross you out, but you know this, Iowa, North Carolina, South Carolina, there are lakes filled with, you know what, coming from pigs and from cattle and from chickens. Insects do this greatly. So in many instances, the flying phenotype of a bug, a fly, a cicada, these are animals that while they are the flying objects, they don't eat anything. They're looking for a girlfriend or for a boyfriend. I don't know what the thing is, but the larval stage coming out of the ground, certainly in case of the cicadas, and this is the larva of the black army fly, there are 80 to 90% fat. There was a time we were killing whales to make candles. You know, here is a huge resource that recapture carbons that are not being used. We're making ethanol from sugar cane, sugar beets, and corn. 2 carbons in ethanol to burn, okay? There are 18, 20, 25 carbons in fatty acids. So to me, what's the difference? Squeeze an olive or squeeze a maggot? So there you go. So here is the final one. Define what you're going to do to change the world. The responsibility is on all of us. Work with the energy of a crusader and do everything in excess. That saying of do everything in moderation is nonsense. Show me an elite athlete, a musician, a top-notch scientist. If you're going to study like there's no tomorrow. If you're going to love passionately. everything in excess. I don't believe that stuff. Anyways, thank you very much.
Phil, would you like to come and join us? We've got a couple of minutes for any questions for Robilotto and Chacon. Thank you both for wonderful presentations. By the way, Andres Iniesta, 5'7", weighs 150 pounds. He's a genius. No one get anywhere near him. Scored winning goals in World Cup finals.
I agree.
Plays for Barcelona.
Yeah.
There are other teams he can play for. But anyway, so question, please.
Marian.
Company and then moved on to the services
Yeah.
company. And you mentioned Lonza and Chacon were around, and that's
Sure.
who we're losing clients to.
Yeah.
How did you realize that? What was the competitive landscape at that time, and how did you realize that you could compete with the Lonza and the Catalans at the time?
Miriam, at the end of the day, you know, the question was, how hard can it be? You know, no, I mean, I joke about this, but there is a word in the English language that is wonderful. It is absolutely. You know, I remember going to the NIH door to door, selling stuff. And people ask me, Marco, can you, they will buy media or serum products from me. And then they will say, Marco, we need to scale this up. Can you do this? Before they finished the sentence, I said, absolutely. Because one of the things that I learned to do very well was to sell culture of all kinds. I mean, in those early days, there were no serum-free formulations to speak of. So I wanted to develop new medias, but it was, the transformation of the company has to do with listening to the marketplace. So people kept asking for services. Marco, do this for us, do that. And all the way, I mean, I was flabbergasted to the day that Pfizer Pharmaceutical said, you know what? We're interested in you doing this one project for us. It was fermentation, some recombinant proteins in coli. But I had a very modest operation, and I was squirming like there was no tomorrow. This is mighty Pfizer. If you go to one of those campuses, perhaps you have, it's like a university campus. And ask myself, well, why in the world would they want little us to do anything for them? Well, the pressure for efficiencies inside of those large companies it kept on mounting and mounting. And I don't know. I just don't understand how they make decisions, or they don't. But but you find great people too. The people that came from Pfizer, from Groton, were wonderful people. The guy by the name of Paul Watts ended up giving me equipment so that we could do larger projects for them. And well, give in the sense, yeah, it was almost given. Gave me the equipment at a value X, and the deal was no money exchanged, and we will price the projects up to 20% lower than we would otherwise. But it was a handshake. You don't do that anymore at Pfizer, by the way. Yes.
Yeah. Fascinating story that you grew a company from one person and sold it. I think probably the hardest part is, I assume that one person is you, of course.
Well, my wife was number 2, and she was with me all throughout. Yeah.
Who will be the second and third? I think the beginning part is hard. Like how do you grow from one person to another?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're always looking for that mythical person that can do everything, and that's very tough. Except for Joe Cowger. I'm not kidding you. I hired this individual, and you know, on the P&L there is a line there, repairs and maintenance, and I was spending thousands, you know, per month on that. Here comes John, fearless. This goes down to 0. He will tackle anything. So he's an engineer by training. So you need, it depends. I think that at any stage of the company, if you have instruments and equipment, and then you need an engineer type of mind. And then you need sort of from cell biology. Okay, well now we'll have cell biologists, but guess what? Now we're expressing proteins. Now you need a protein chemist. So one thing sort of demands something else. And you start making bets on good people. But it becomes self-evident as to what the company needs. One thing that you need very early on is a solid a business development individual. I wore my salesman hat for a long time, even deep into the history of the company, but I brought very capable people to do that. It's a different mindset. These are people who are very gregarious. They're very much at ease in talking about anything. So it's about relationships. Yes, Raza.
How do you create buy-in with these early employees? How do you get people to leave stable jobs, assuming that they were at more stable jobs, to work for a startup that hasn't been credible?
That's a very good question. And I think that there are people who are adventurous and they like the small place. You know, to me, that's why I was doing stuff on my own, because, you know, you may think that being at Pfizer and being at Bristol Myers is a panacea, or MedImmune for that matter. And they've been shedding people. I mean, the name doesn't even exist anymore. And pharmaceutical companies have sort of compressed in ways that I wasn't anticipating many years back. And they continue to do that. So either you're influential in a small group, or you are another number in a very large place. And I think it's what people perceive as being safety. Some people want to be a little bit more adventurous, or a lot more adventurous. They're both good. It's just that what gets people going.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to go, but let's thank Phil and Martin.